Hey guys, welcome back to Arlie at Home. I'm Arlie. We're in my kitchen and today we're going to be making delicious, fluffy, crusty, homemade bagels. Alright guys, let's get started with our bagel dough. So I have the bowl of my stand mixer. This is my buddy over here. We're actually going to be using that today. You know, sometimes I like to make things by hand just so that you guys can see it in case you don't have the stand mixer. I really recommend something like this. They have some handheld ones that are a lot less expensive and I can link them down below, and I'll link my KitchenAid as well. This guy is not the little one. He is a Pro series one, so the handle, actually the bucket itself gets lifted up into it instead of the lifting and folding. It's just a little bit bigger and has a higher capacity. But let's get into it. So we're going to start this off with 1 1/4 cup of warm water. You don't want cold water, you want warm water with this so that we can bloom our yeast and get it going. To that, we're going to add a tablespoon of honey. You can use malt barley syrup if you can find it. You can use maple syrup if you can find it, or if you have it, if you don't have honey. I have both, but I prefer honey always. And this is an orange blossom honey because we are in Florida and orange blossom honey is local to us. Let's dissolve all the honey into the water, and then we're going to add 2 1/4 teaspoons of dry active yeast. This is equivalent to 1 packet. If you just want to make the 1 packet, they sell a sleeve that brings 3 individual little packets, so this is equivalent to that. I buy the bigger containers of them, so I just measure it out. 1 packet equals 2 1/4 teaspoons. Let me get everything out of there. Stir it up, making sure that you're dissolving the yeast into the water and honey. And we're going to set that aside. You're going to let all of that yeast melt into it and bloom and be super happy and to work. Okay, for this recipe, we're not doing cups, we're not doing anything. A kitchen scale is going to be our friend. And what we're going to do is measure out our flour by weight. So for this recipe, we're going to need 540 grams of flour. So all flours are different. Traditionally, it calls for a bread flour, which is a little bit higher in protein, but with my recipe, you can use an all-purpose flour. I try to keep everything as an all-purpose flour base because I'm not going to go out and buy different kinds of flour. So I modify my recipes just a little bit differently so that it works for everybody at home. We're at 500. $5.40. Perfect. And to that flour, we're going to add 2 teaspoons of salt. We're going to give it a couple minutes to let this guy bloom. And you do this for 2 reasons. You want to make sure, number 1, that your yeast is alive and that it's good and that it hasn't expired and that you'll actually get the leavening from it. And 2, you want it to start fizzing and activating because it dissolves and you don't have granules and pockets of yeast. You want it to be one cohesive dough. So we're going to let this bloom for a few more minutes and then we'll put it all together and make our dough. All right, guys, so we have the yeast inside of our bowl over here bloomed ready. You see all that foaminess? That's our alive and happy and well yeast. So that's in here, it's ready to go. We're going to start adding we're going to add all of our flour in there and our salt. Just carefully put that in there. trying to not make a mess. And then we're gonna fit it with our dough hook. Lift it up, and we're gonna start slow, just so we don't make a huge mess, and we want it to combine. Alright guys, so our dough is done kneading, and now we're just going to spray the inside of a bowl. I prefer stainless steel, but you can use glass without an issue. We're going to spray it with a little bit of just a canola oil spray, something very neutral. And we're going to take our dough off the hook. See, it should be a clean dough that has completely pulled away from the sides. See? This guy was already trying to be a bagel. Not yet, buddy. Not yet. Now we're just going to form this into a ball. I don't even need to flour the surface. You don't want to do that because then you'll create a really dense dough. What we did by kneading it for 5 to 7 minutes was create gluten strands that make it a nice, strong, firm bagel. Now we're going to place this in here, and we're going to cover it with plastic wrap, and we're going to let it rest for an hour to an hour and a half. It should double in size. That's it. Alright guys, now for the bagel dough. Look how beautiful it looks. So I have over here a sheet tray that's lined with parchment paper. You could use a cookie sheet, but nothing like a 9x13 baking dish or roasting pan. Nothing deep. It has to be shallow like this. And I'm going to very lightly spray the parchment paper, just for good measure. Over here, we have our beautiful dough. Now I'm not going to flour our work surface at all. This is perfect. It's so beautiful. Okay. So we're going to turn it over. Oh, it's perfect. Just going to kind of roll this out a little bit just so that it's easier to divide it. Grab a knife, and we're going to divide this into 8 equal portions. So in half, then in half again, and in half again. So you end up with 8 pieces that are just about the same size. And now, what we're going to do with this is roll it out into a log. Some people will make it into a ball and just poke the hole into it. I don't like to do that. So you just take this little log, turn it onto itself, over your hands like that, so the 2 ends meet, and then you're gonna roll it. And what you're left with is a bagel. And then when you see, if you can see up close, how it has kind of like little ridges, that'll end up being crispy little toasty bits when you're eating your bagel. Think ahead. So let's knock out the rest of these, just like the first one. That was easy. We're going to put these off to the side, cover them, and let them rest for about 30 minutes. Okay guys, look at how beautiful our bagels have risen, have rested, they're ready to go, and they're ready to move on to the next step. So I'm going to take these guys and set them over here to the side real quick. And we're just going to set up an egg wash. So after we boil the bagels, we're going to brush them with a little bit of an egg wash over the top. That's the moment in time where you're going to add any topping or flavoring to it. For instance, I'm going to be using some McCormick Everything But the Bagel seasoning. To our egg, we're just going to add about a tablespoon or 2 of water. it really well to make sure that that egg has broken up. Perfect. And we're gonna set that aside as well. I have a silicone baking brush that we're gonna be using to put that egg wash over the top of the bagels. And over here, I have another sheet pan. You can use a baking sheet, a cookie sheet with parchment on it. And I'm gonna give it just a light spraying of our canola oil. And that's it. We're ready to start cooking these guys. I have the oven preheated to 450 and I have my pot getting ready so that we can boil them, transfer them onto this cookie sheet, and put them into the oven. Okay guys, let's get ready to start boiling these bagels up. So to our boiling water, we are gonna add 2 teaspoons of salt, and about 2 teaspoons of honey. And we're gonna let that dissolve before we add our bagels in. Perfect. So one at a time, we're gonna pop them in. If you have a bigger pot, you can do 2 at a time. But I'm gonna let that boil. I don't like to crowd my pans. I prefer to just have them float around, move around, because I'm gonna have to flip these after a minute and do the other side. And I prefer to have the space to move around. So I'll do 1 at a time. I'm in no hurry. Alright guys, it's been 15 minutes at 450 in the oven. Let's pop them out and see what they look like. Oh my god, they're beautiful. Look at how beautiful they are. I did 4 everything bagels because I love everything bagels, and I did 4 plain bagels because my husband loves the plain bagels and so does my son. So we can make some really amazing sandwiches with these, or just enjoy them toasted with some cream cheese or some butter or some jam. I love these. They taste so good. Oh, they're nice and here. That's the sound of good bread. So guys, thank you so much for joining. I hope and pray that you guys will make these at home for yourselves and for your family. They're so great, and you know the ingredients that go into it. It's not something processed from a store somewhere, from a factory, made by who knows what and who knows where. This is homemade food, and like I always say, homemade is best. So let's rally around the kitchen, let's work together, let's share with each other. This is what it's all about. I hope you guys love these as much as we're gonna enjoy them. Thank you so much for spending the time with me. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and ring that little bell so that you'll know every time I post a video. Thank you again. Love you guys.